Hello and welcome back to Kirby on Calories. I haven't done an update for a while on this channel for many reasons. Everything is just so fast moving, and sometimes I don't think that my updates would be particularly helpful to other parents because my situation is very, very complex. And the last thing I'd want to do is put the fear of God into any parents going through this, that, you know, it's going to end up the same for you, because not necessarily. But yes, so since I have last done an update, things have moved on and they haven't. My daughter has no intention of ever eating food ever again. She says that to us. And she hasn't shown any signs of wanting to or any signs of being inclined to. And so we were left with the situation where we just have to move her life on now and accept that that's possibly going to be the case forever. If it's not great, but there's no point waiting for it. There is no point in putting our hopes in a system that's not working for her. Where she is at the moment, it said in the CQC report that it is not an appropriate place for a child with autism, and I agree, and certainly not for a child her age. So where haven't things moved on? Like I say, she's still solely tube fed, and she is still very much struggling with regulation and her mental health. Really struggling. So what has changed? So she got a high school place back at home, which is amazing. You know, it's everything we could have wanted. And she was really motivated by the thought of starting back school in September, which is brilliant. You know, that's great. She's been on a couple of transition days, which have gone really well. She's met a lot of the team there, a lot of the SEN team, who have been absolutely brilliant and so understanding and compassionate. And it's all you could want as a parent. That's great. Now then, in order to make this work, what we would have to do is we would have to very gradually, because discharge seems like a rejection to her, we would have to very gradually move her to being a day patient. And what this would mean is getting her fed closer to home in the morning so she could then attend high school and live at home. We have managed to get, in principle, an agreement that she could be fed at one of the local health centres to us. They've agreed to employ 2 to 3 people, or second them, whichever, to become NG tube fed trained, to be able to feed her for us in the morning, which is incredible, and we're very, very grateful. And it was actually the head of the ward at Rainbow Ward, where she first stayed, that seems to be the one making all the, you know, the kind of like the right moves with this, and we're really, really grateful. She's been amazing. So however, this has to be paid for. Nothing comes for free. And so now the commissioner has to find a funding stream that will pay for this for us. And we're pretty confident it'll happen. There is funding out there. It's just identifying the right one. And obviously these things don't happen fast. And we've got 4 or 5 weeks till school. Now then, the problem. This is the problem. This is where it gets complicated. And a lot of you parents with children in this situation will know that they get stuck in limbo. They don't want to come home because home would mean pressure to eat. They don't want to stay where they are because it's grim, you know, it's grim, that place. It's not nice. It's not nice. I can't even describe to you how clinical it is. It's not a home, which I'm glad, you know, I don't want to get too comfortable there anyway, but at the same time, she has to spend a lot of time there. So she's very much in limbo. And since discussions have started about her transition into a day patient, despite her having had a good 4 weeks where she was doing well, she was engaging there, she was doing great at school in the unit, which is an excellent school, she started to resist feeds. Now, what happens when they resist feeds is there's a gradient of holds that are needed. Sometimes it might just be a hold of a hand to encourage her to accept the feed. NG feeds are fed, hers is anyway, by gravity through a bolus that's fed into a tube. Sometimes it's just a supportive handhold. Sometimes it's a handhold and a head hold. But she was resisting to the point of biting staff, spitting at staff, kicking out at staff, and therefore she was having to have a full restraint, which is really traumatic for her and the staff. It's not nice for anyone. You know, they rang me and they said, I need your permission to make her wear a visor every time we feed her because she's spitting at us. So I was like, oh God, it's so dehumanising. I totally get why they have to do it, but it's just a horrible situation for all involved. So that happened a couple of times, and then on the third time that she resisted, she was that bad that they had to pin her down in the corridor and administer a feed that way, which is just not appropriate. Again, it's dehumanising. It's not a purpose-made building. There are no facilities there for her to de-escalate when she gets like this. And so I had a couple of phone calls from them following this. The first one was to say, we're not sure that we're the right facility for her anymore. Oh, really? Isn't this what I was saying to you about 6 months ago? And, you know, you were like, no, you just have to trust the process. And yeah. So this was quite upsetting because I'm like, this is moving us further and further away from what we're trying to do with her. We're trying to get her back to school. We're trying to get her back into a normal life. Moving her facilities now, you know, over to a facility that I wanted to get her into, but, you know, at the time, they're like, there's no places. Now, all of a sudden, it seems to be a possibility. It's infuriating. It is. Yeah. Where she is not right for it. It's not right for any child. It's dreadful. It is. And I'm sure they have children that recover there when they have, dare I say it, straightforward eating disorders. But when they have autism and PDA and other things at play, no, it is not good. So that was the first phone call. Obviously, I was very upset by this. I thought, this is just more upheaval for her. It's going to send her backwards. Anyway, and then they decided that they were going to place her under section. I was mortified. I was, not for me, for her, you know, like, what does this mean for her? Does this mean that she can't leave the ward now? You know, what's it? Is it going to be like one flew over the cuckoo's nest? Like, what does this mean? No. Ultimately, we do still have parental responsibility for her. But now that she's under section, it means that they kind of get the final say in things. And they said it's for her protection and for the staff's protection that she's under this legal framework now, because when they're having to administer these really tough restrained holds, there's risk involved on both sides. I understand. I do get it. So she's currently under section 3. She can still have home leave, but it has to be agreed by a consultant. So that was where we were. And it's almost like she's sabotaging the whole coming home thing, because the time's moving on and moving on. You know, for 3 weeks, there was talk of them taking her off section. She was doing really well. And then we had an unfortunate incident on Sunday, which I won't go into detail about, but she made a statement, a really big one. And it was very, very worrying. And it just brought to the forefront how unwell she still is, how troubled she still is, like almost like the food's one issue, but there are just so many others at play now. And I'm not sure she's ready to be in that mainstream school, which breaks my heart to say, because that was our goal. Now I'm currently sat outside of her drama group back in town. She attended summer school, which she has done from being 5-6 years old, like a sister. And we've been picking her up every single morning, or taking her back to the unit every single morning for a feed so that she could come and attend here every day. They practice Monday to Thursday, and then they have a show on a Friday night. It's always been an absolute highlight of our year. You know, it's lovely to see them doing what they love. And then on the Saturday, today, they have an after party where they come back together and they watch a recording of the show, and it's all very nice. However, during this week, she found it really hard. A couple of kids accidentally did her lines for her because they'd forgotten their own, and the kind of like autistic distress kicked in, and she kicked off massively, and couldn't calm down. She was quite abusive to the tutor, and then she just really couldn't. She just can't de-escalate her own behaviour. So she did it on the Thursday. She calmed down after that. She came back into the class. She apologised. She moved on. However, she did it again yesterday. And I don't know what she said to this tutor, but this tutor couldn't even bring herself to tell me what she'd said. It must have been bad. she can be very abusive. I've been on the receiving end. It's like I said to the tutor, it's not personal. I know that doesn't help, but a lot of the time she accuses me of abuse in front of new people. And I'm saying this on here with a very clean conscience that I've never abused my children. You can ask my other one. And it's just something that she says to control, because that means that she's not safe at home if she says that, and so she can't come home. And it's really tiring. So after some pleading and negotiating last night, after she came home from the day session, they agreed to let her perform last night, and it was wonderful. And she was amazing. She's always been amazing on stage, just like her sister. They're absolute naturals, and you know, she was the one who remembered all the lines. She's flipping Rain Man when it comes to remembering lines. Sorry if that's offensive anyone, but she is. She's got a great memory, and it was lovely to see her up there on stage doing what she loves. And all of her friends here at the drama group have been so understanding. I have access to a WhatsApp, which I do monitor, and you know, whether you think it's right or wrong, I don't give a shit. We've had problems sometimes with her communicating with people and the way she communicates her distress, so I need to do that. And all of the children here have been very understanding. And then last night when I turned up to the show, I spoke to the lady that runs it, and I was very apologetic. And obviously they don't have the same emotional attachment to Ez that I do. I know they're fond of her, but you know, she's my daughter, and they asked that I don't bring her today, and I was devastated to give the other children a chance to have an enjoyable morning. And my heart broke into a million pieces, just stood there as she said it. I understand, this is their business, you know, they'll have had children come in that aren't part of the regular theatre group, and I totally get it. I get it. It's like I say, it's their livelihood. However, in that moment, my heart just broke. And I sat down to watch the show, and I was like, I'll speak to her. I sat down to watch the show, and I saw her up there, and I saw how much she'd put into it. And I'd read her messages to her friends on WhatsApp, and when she apologised, she said to them, I just can't help it. I'm so sorry. I can't help being like this. But I know she has to have consequences when she behaves like this, because, you know, she's got to live in society where you can't just abuse people when they say something you don't like. So I can see both sides of it. But anyway, I decided to have a word about it. She promised that there'd be nothing like that today, and I had a chat with the tutor that she'd been really rude to and abusive to, and she was very lovely. She was very understanding. I think that she saw my distress at the thought of having to exclude her from yet another thing in life. You know, I just couldn't. I was worried how she'd react. I was worried what she would do, because she conveys a distress in very, very dangerous ways, as we found out last weekend, and I didn't want that happening again. So they let her come, on the proviso that I sit outside in my car for 3 hours, just in case it all kicks off. Just in case it all kicks off. I don't know what I'm going to do. But yeah, I'm here to just whisk her off if I need to. So I thought it's a good opportunity to have a little catch up and to say that this is where we are. Things are really, really hard right now, because like I say, we're in a no man's land. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if school's going to happen. We know what she wants from life, but we know that she doesn't know how to get it. It's just such a shame for her sister, who's in the middle of all this, and sometimes having to speak to friends who she said things to and things. But you know, I've also taken a job for September, which I thought would be perfect. I'm going full time in a school, so I can have the holidays off with her. So we're just gonna have to see how that goes. I'm sure it'll be fine. I think I need it more than anything. And it's hard not to be negative, right? I have a lot of, like, you know, positive mental health gurus on my Instagram that are all like, you know, you shouldn't complain and you shouldn't do this and that. But it's like, fuck me. Sometimes you just need to, don't you? Sometimes you just need to say, things are pretty shit. Things are really shit. And if I swallow it down and try to act all the time like things aren't shit, the only person that's doing damage to is me. And if I'm in a bad way, I can't help her. So, yeah. So we're not in a better place. We're not. We're just trying to move things on, because that's all you can do. That's all you can do. And and just hope for the best and hope that one day things won't be this difficult for her. She deserves a better life than what she's got right now. She deserves the world. And I have no doubt that this is not pleasant for her. It's not enjoyable for her at all. This amount of restriction that she has on herself, and then this need to fit into a patient persona when she's on this god-awful unit. And it's difficult because they don't have any clinical staff on the weekend. So I'd have really liked to have spoken to them like last night and say, look, this has happened. You need to be aware of this when I bring her back tomorrow, because there could be, an incident maybe, but there's no clinical staff on the weekend. Of course they have to have weekends too, I get it. But there's no weekends off from this situation. So, yeah. But as always, if any of you are in this situation, or there's anything at all that I can do to help any of you guys, like I have become one of those parents. I'm pretty sure they all hate me, but I don't care anymore. I've been told to bide my time more times, and yet I feel like sometimes my daughter's being treated for her autism rather than for her eating disorder, or for the mental health issues that are coming with it, and she's not in there to be treated for autism. So that's where we're at the moment. Potential unit move, who knows? Starting school, who knows? It's all very up in the air. But at least she has managed to get through this week and nobody has died, which is good. However, there's still like 2.5 hours left, so I shouldn't say that, should I? But yeah, thank you for listening. I know there'll be some people who will comment and say, oh, why are you sharing this stuff? But you know what? I feel like I have to. This is my story. This is, my experience. And who am I not to share my story if I get in touch with parents like I have done that are in a similar situation, one of which I actually ended up meeting on the ward. Her daughter's also been admitted now, and I was speaking to her on social media purely through doing these videos. So there are more of us out there. There are. And it's just a matter of trying to keep your head on and doing what you can to make sure that you can move on with your life as well, because while all this is going on, life is moving on, and you can't just put things on hold. You can't. So if anybody sees me in the gym all the time and things like that, I think, God, she spends a lot of time in the gym. I flipping need to. I need to spend time in the gym so that I don't do hard drugs. Because then social services would be on my back, wouldn't they? So yeah, that's where we're up to anyway. But thank you for listening. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody's got. Obviously, I won't go into too much detail for the sake of preserving her dignity and things like that. It's hard to. It is hard to, because this is our story. And this will be, as I've always said, the bones of what will help in future, because it will. Because no child should be stuck in a place that's not suitable for them. No child should be restrained because of autistic meltdown rather than just defiance. No child should be in this situation. No child should be told that food's good or bad. And also, in fact, on that note, so I've spoken before about her having this lesson in school, and I don't blame it on her having this lesson, but this did highlight a lot of her rigidity in thinking and how she started to turn her thoughts around food. That she had a lesson delivered by a PE teacher at primary school that talked about food being good and bad, and she was obviously distressed because she came home, she cried about it, she talked about it all night, and then the restrictions started with the food. Not saying that was why it started. Obviously me and her dad had separated and things like that, so could have been perfect storm. But I had a chat with her, the teacher. I went on a school trip, and I actually ended up having a chat with her, and she said to me, we've always taught that lesson that way, and I probably will continue to do so. And I thought, okay, but just because you've always taught it that way doesn't mean that there haven't been children that have been distressed by it previously, and that it shouldn't be taught a different way. There have always been children with autism. It's just that they haven't always been labelled as such. There have always been children that have ruminated over things and OCD with the thoughts concern. So maybe Mrs. Lovely PE teacher, because she is lovely, it's time for a change, and maybe you could be the driving force behind that, because somebody has to be. Somebody has to be. Food isn't good, food isn't bad, food is necessary, and food is fuel, and something needs to change. But that's one for another time anyway. So thank you for listening. That's past half an hour. I might have a nap now instead, and just hope it all doesn't kick off in there.